I'm Nicole.
I'm Rolando.
And I'm Eddie Z.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals,
an original podcast
about unoriginality.
And this is part 2 of our Bridget Jones series. And today we're going to focus on the new 2025 film, straight to Peacock in the US movie, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. This is the fourth installment of Bridget Jones. We're kind of going from the diary to Mad About the Boy, but tune in for part 3 where we will talk a little bit about the Edge of Reason and Bridget Jones's baby. However, because this is the latest revival within the franchise, the cinematic universe that is the Bridget Jones world, let's just talk a little bit about that. Years 2025, co-production, USA, UK. The director is the first time a man is directing a Bridget Jones film, Michael Morris.
I didn't know it was the first time directed by a man. Okay.
Yeah, the first 2 were directed by Helen Fielding. The third, the baby film, was directed by another woman whose name I can't think of right now, and now first time directed by a man. Okay. The script was co-written by Helen Fielding, Dan Mazer, and Ebby Morgan, and this is indeed based on yet another Bridget Jones book. So it is based on the book series.
This lady's really making a living off of this book series,
Bridget Jones. Yeah. It's a diehard fan base, let me tell you. The budget was $15 million, and it was released in the UK and Ireland, and it actually had the best box office opening ever for romantic comedy in those countries, according to Universal. It has already grossed $35.5 million there.
Wow.
I don't know if, I'm sure it will keep growing for them, but America's not going to help there because in America, it got straightly released to Peacock.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I know, Valentine's Day weekend, a big kind of moneymaker that they could have had a bunch of couples, a bunch of older people going out to the theater. And they just were like, nah, F that. So
they probably know that like most older people don't want to go to the movie theaters, much like myself.
Some people are divided. A really good movie will get them out. And then even that really good movie, they'll be like, you know what? I'm patient. I'll wait. So
a good spectacle movie will get me out, but I don't think I need to see a rom-com in theaters. That seems like a movie that I would want to see, like, you know, in a more intimate setting. Cuddle up.
Yeah, and yet, I don't know. And I don't know how you feel about this, Eddie, but I really enjoy watching comedies with other people. And I don't know. I just like, I know that it's a spectacle, it's the loud, it's all the boom bang, whatever. But I also just like hearing people like laugh and enjoy a movie.
It's so interesting. Do you consider rom-coms part of the comedy genre? Not like I guess romance isn't a genre.
100% I do, because they are insanely farcical. They do not take themselves seriously. They get off on being awkward and a spectacle within its own way. So yeah, and we'll talk about some of those things that get attributed to the Bridget Jones movies. But before we do, let's talk about what this movie is about. Rolando, would you like to give a brief summary of Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy?
So in Mad About the Boy, Mark Darcy is dead. And now Bridget Jones is picking up the pieces after she is a widow. She is living, I don't know, in England somewhere, fancy, full of like rich moms. And she is, you know, slowly picking up the pieces of her life now that she doesn't have the man of her one true love. And her friends, who are way too involved with her sex life, advise her to go get some, and she finds some in the form of a much younger man, played by Leo Woodall. And then she will go on to pursue another love interest. This one played by a teacher, his name escapes me.
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
He was a bad guy in Doctor Strange.
That's it. You're right. Okay, there we go.
He was in 12 Years a Slave. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely just went off cusp there and didn't read the summary that I wrote, but that's cool.
I don't have my computer in front of me, so I can't help you.
Just why do I do all this work? Okay. So like you said, though, spoiler, actually, which you didn't say, but spoiler, yes, Mark Darcy has died.
I don't think that's a spoiler. It was in the trailer.
I didn't watch the trailer.
Okay. I saw the trailer.
Oh, I thought you were anti-trailer.
I mean, for like, I didn't care about the Bridget Jones Diary series, so
Mm. It is in the plot description if you look it up. But yeah, they finally figured out, instead of the whole, because in the other two movies, it's always like they break up and then they find an excuse to come back together. And she has to be single, right? We love it when Bridget Jones is single and like inspires herself to be better, quote unquote. And so they're like, whoa, what if she's like the ultimate single? She's a widow, So they went that way.
I suppose that is the ultimate single. Yeah.
I suppose so. Well, this movie. So I'm assuming you guys didn't watch all 4 Bridget Jones movies, correct?
No. I'm in the middle of the second one, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, Eddie actually took to. I think actually Eddie took to it because he started liking the most recent one. He wanted to go back. Where I actually might go back and watch the other Bridget Joneses because I actually, spoiler alert, did like this one. So I may go back. But from my understanding, the other 2 are not as good.
So Bridget Jones, The Edge of Reason, is a regurgitation of the first one. Except now, like, even zanier things happen to her. It's almost like the zaniness that happens to her. Yeah, and she goes to jail, all this stuff. So it just gets crazier.
Sounds like a Medea movie.
So the first Edge of Reason was like 3 years after the first one. Then it was 10 years later between Baby. And at that point, in Baby, Daniel Cleaver, the Hugh Grant character, he's missing and presumed dead. Right? So they like all go to his funeral. So now the other guy is Patrick Dempsey. And it's like, oh, which one? It's like a, 2 people, not 3 people, Mamma Mia. Like, oh, who's the husband? At the end of that movie, who's the father? At that movie, it's determined that, yes, Colin Firth, as everyone knew, was the father. And they reveal that Daniel Cleaver was found alive and that he's not dead.
I think that's because Hugh Grant just didn't want to be a part of that movie. He hated the script.
Yeah, something like that. I think it was the only one that went off of the Bridget Jones, like, canon. Like, it wasn't based on a book. And now here we are. And she has 2 children. She's in her 50s and she's completely widowed. And yet Daniel Cleaver's in this movie. No mention of Patrick Dempsey at all. They do this like really nice scene where all these different characters from all the different movies appear in her kitchen and they're the voices in her head. And she ain't thinking about Patrick Dempsey.
So. Well, I mean, from my understanding, he was just there like it was like a fling, right?
The movie lets you to believe that they've developed this beautiful friendship based off of their experiences of him pretty much acting like he was the father for 9 months. Yeah. But I guess he said, peace out, I'm going back to America. So it's amazing because these movies, even though it's been 24 years since the first one, and a lot has changed, and the movie's aware of the things that need to change, and we will talk about that. It also is like people came here for a Bridget Jones movie, and we have to follow the classic beats. So in a lot of ways, it doesn't stray too far. There's 2 men that she's torn between, and she's left in a position where she has to kind of like motivate herself and get better. And yes, there are kind of 2 men because the way that the teacher
there are 2 men
set up as,
but it's not like a love triangle.
Yeah, I don't think it's not a love triangle.
It isn't, but at the same time, the teacher is introduced like pretty much like he's Mr. Darcy. Like he's stubborn. He's kind of like the weirdo. He's awkward. He's kind of like the male Bridget in his own unique scientific way. And there is kind of like this tension in the beginning that doesn't really get established. So it's not like Leo Woodall and Chiwetel are like battling each other and, fighting through a glass window or anything. But it's still like, oh, here's the one guy that you don't think it's going to be the grumpy guy. And then surprise, it's the grumpy guy. After she like goes around with the fuck boy.
He wasn't a fuck boy. I will defend this character, a Rockstar.
I don't know. You ghost a girl, you're a little bit of a fuckboy, in my opinion.
No, I feel like that's not ghosting someone does not make you a fuckboy. It's a quality of a fuckboy, but does not only make a fuckboy. He seemed much more sincere in his actual pursuit of Bridget Jones. I'm actually shocked at like how nice they made Rockstar for what could have been a very douchey character.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, they didn't completely villainize him or make him out to have any ulterior motives. He just got scared.
Yeah, which is completely understandable. I think that's fair. That's she's a woman in her 50s with 2 children. He is in his 20s, and he's going to he may want children one day. You know what I mean? So the age is very much an obstacle that they would have to overcome. And we're getting ahead of ourselves, but it's one that she decided for them.
Well, the movie immediately is more self-aware than any other Bridget Jones movie was. And, now people are like getting called out for being sexist within the movie, even though back in the 2001, Bridget Jones kind of helped, well, whether or not they knew it. And we talked about this in some of our social media clips and in the last episode, it helped perpetuate fat shaming and helped perpetuate these really toxic ideas that were running rampant in the 2000s. So this movie's kind of backpedaling. It actually kind of reminded me a lot of the new Sex and the City. And just like that, where they're like, yeah, we weren't conscious of these things earlier, but we're making up for that now. And boy, are we're making up for it. And like times two, which is not necessarily a complaint, but it's an immediate departure from the other films.
Which is a dangerous game, actually, now in this political climate we're in, right? Like, they might.
I think
they might have performed better. Like, they actually probably would have gotten. This is maybe why they went into Peacock, right? It's just like, well, Trump won, so they're going to scream this is DEI. So let's put this on.
This is true. Yeah,
let's put this on Peacock.
Thank God they filmed this movie because Trump would have fired all of them. But yeah, but it's so funny that, and yet the classic beats are there. She is unwillingly single, and everyone still treats her like she's a freak.
She is, yes. Everyone is so involved with her sex life in this film.
Everyone cares so much. Like that dinner party scene where they're all just like staring daggers at her and like, so tell us, I mean, your life is really sad, right? Like, when was the last time you had sex, right?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm the kind of friend that does indulge in my friends' misfortunes, so I understand where they're coming from.
Not even just like what they're doing on the side and their misfortunes. I love that. I mean, yes, look, we all love a little healthy amount of chisme, but it's just in the movie, she just like, she was single. She was younger and she was single. She's a fucking widow with 2 children and they're all like, just, I think being a little too much. Granted, it is important for people to get out there. I'm not like anti women shouldn't get back out there.
It sounds like you are.
It depends on what the person wants, and you shouldn't actually force them to do anything or pressure them, which I felt like a lot of the people in her life were kind of pressuring her. And yeah, too, like, I don't know, is it the right time? Like, you kind of need to give people the space to grieve on their own time. And grieve is the big word here. This movie, all the other movies were kind of about sex and relationships. This movie's kind of about that, but it's actually a movie about grief. And I went into it not prepared for that. And this movie did take me back. And I was like, oh, wow, this movie's more mature than the other films because she's in her 50s now. So this movie has matured with Bridget, with all the things that she's going through. And it's smart enough to know that the audience and the main fan base here has also probably gone through similar situations or experienced this to an extent and really wants to resonate now with people on this level. But it still has that silliness. So it was doing like a lot of a balancing act. She's still like out there dancing to Modern Love, or she's out there dancing when, the Gen Z intern like freezes up on stage.
Which is how uncharacteristic. He works in media. He wants to be on that stage.
I got some students who are in media and who you put them in a camera and they're like, they don't know what to do. So.
Oh, that's crazy. I always tell them to loosen up. You throw like some, you throw soda at their feet.
Yeah, no, that's really great idea, Rolando.
I'm a great teacher.
But so it's just like, yeah, it's balancing. It's balancing the silly, sex and relationship movies that you want, and this whole story about grief and a mother, widowed with these 2 young children, and how do I deal with it? Does it do both of them well? That's something we can discuss. But it is doing that. I will say the silliness part didn't work for me as much. I think the grief aspects were stronger for me and really resonated and struck a chord. Then when it went back to the silliness, I didn't really love it.
What are the sillinesses that you're counting? Because
like the condom shaming scene.
Okay, yeah, that seemed to feel a little out of place because it's just like it's 2025 or 2024, I guess. I don't know. It's who cares?
Is it still embarrassing for people to go out and buy condoms? Now, I never buy condoms, but I'm like, this feels like an 80s and early 90s joke. Like, people should be celebrated for practicing safe sex. And it's still a fucking joke.
It was like a joke also done in the Golden Girls.
Yes, it was done in the Golden Girls.
Stuff like that too. But maybe it's a testimony to that, what it is to mature and then recognize that, I got to start practicing safe sex. You know,
Yeah, but then
because
like
I'm out of dating. I'm dating now, and
the
I mean,
cashier made it weird, and then the guy was behind her, and everyone's like, "Oh, she's a slut. Oh, she's a total slut." Like,
no,
wow,
no one
she's
said she was a
No,
slut. No one said
They're
she's a
thinking
slut.
that.
No, that's what
He-
you're thinking. That's what you're thinking. I'm thinking she's a liberated woman. She knows how to protect herself. I actually.
The movie played it awkward, where it was like, "Oh,
Well,
she should be embarrassed by this."
I don't
That's
think
how the
it's that she
movie
should-
played it.
No,
I
but
don't know.
time out. At the same time, but hang on. But that's not Bridget Jones, who has always necessarily owned her shit.
Exactly. So if you put that in a Bridget Jones movie, it's making fun of it. It's an embarrassing.
It's not
moment.
making, but I think yes. I think there is true that there's a level of embarrassment, but I don't think that the embarrassment is that she is being slut shamed. I think the embarrassment here is more like she clearly doesn't know what she's doing.
Okay, fair enough, but it was just like a joke that I was like, wow, I can't believe we're still telling this in 2025 is all right. Like, I thought we had risen above that.
Yes, I just think we have different reads on that joke.
Sure, but I also think that like having her child get stuck up a tree was the most uninventive thing that the writers could have come up with for her to meet these men. I was like, this is bizarre and highly unrealistic and so silly. Like, really? She's just went up a tree and now Bridget's also stuck up a tree. It just felt so excessively silly. That
Which is so funny.
Like, it's trying to balance all of this realism with that, and it's just like it's not working.
You thought that was silly?
Way.
I didn't think that was. You found that silly? I thought it was just like kind of mundane, to be quite honest.
I thought it was just not clever. I was like, is this really the best that the writers could do? Oh, and then she gets stuck on a tree. I felt it was lazy,
Eddie,
actually.
Your tiebreaker here. Do you think it was silly or kind of just like it seemed normal? Like kids climb trees and then get stuck.
I don't know. I do think that they could have found a more creative way to do this meet cute thing.
Absolutely.
But it was one of those things too where you have the introduction of the two men taking a different approach to how to handle the situation. You know, like one just constantly just offering the help but just not doing anything. And then the other one just taking the initiative and recognizing this is the situation. I'm just going to help anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
right. The other one is always kind of put like as a knight in shining armor every chance we get.
Yeah.
I think that what I think worked in that scene was like her phone was immediately on the hookup app that she was on, right? And that's what the first thing he sees. I thought that was cute.
Yeah, and then that's how they meet. Yeah. One of the other things that didn't work for me is the trope that all PTA mom are assholes. And again, I'm not the biggest fan of like women villainizing each other. Now, of course, she has a lot of friends, and it's really nice to see that the same friend group is in every single one of these movies. And that, you know, she gets to become friends with her coworkers and whatnot. But the whole, like, you know, PTA mom who just really cares about her child is always portrayed as a villain. I personally don't like that trope because I think it's actually a really sexist trope, and the villainizes mothers who just want to be active in their child's life. You never see that type of character who's a man, who's a father.
Now, I felt that we villainize the PTA moms. Like we were feeling that way because I did not at one point see Bridget be disrespectful or to any of them at any point. Like even when they said something that was a little off color or said something that she had every right to respond in a very nasty way, like mind your business or that's not, you know, she didn't. And even when they barged into her own her meeting, a parent teacher meeting, you know, she was like, she was not, you know, she wasn't disrespectful. So,
but who are you talking about, Bridget?
Bridget. So I feel that Bridget didn't villainize anyone. Like she could have made them the bad guy. She could have been aggressive or mean towards them, but she was not at any point that way to them.
But the movie villainizes. Like the movie's like, wow, this PTA mom asshole kicking Bridget out, being like, oh right, you understand, Bridget. Like the way that the movie portrays her, yes, Bridget is very nice to this character, but the movie is still like, wow, look at this asshole character. I'm not a fan of the trope. I'm just gonna like say that, and I just think I was surprised at some elements that I felt were really dated. Is all. Those are kind of like my thing.
I feel like I don't know. I
I don't think so.
I don't have
As
to
a
deal.
woman, it really bothers me. And maybe this is I
But
have
then-
to pull the card that maybe
then
you
I
guys
could
just
also-
don't understand. Like I'm sure there are certain gay man tropes that you guys don't really appreciate.
Well,
And
of
the
course,
fact
but
that
like
we're still
then I can make the
perpetuating this about women and mothers is
but
like,
I can make the same
can we
argument
move
about the
past
man
this?
because like her husband was uninvolved in the child's life, right? Like so
That's
what every
you
hardworking
should
man
be
is
enraged about
but
that.
like I think I wasn't that enraged. And you know why? It's just because like they're minor characters. I mean, sometimes you just need to have I don't know. I don't think for me she
They're
worked
always
because she
minor
was
characters.
yeah, but she was just such she was such a foil to Bridget Jones. That's literally why she's there. So I don't know.
And you know
like,
who else
and I
used
think
to be reduced to foils and background characters were queer people. I'm just
and
saying.
guess what?
This
We're
is
gonna
not
go
how
right back
progress
in there
gets
now that we're in
made.
2025 and Trump is president.
Well,
I guess
actually,
I'm mentally
Not
getting
if
ready
we
for
raise
it.
our voices.
No, if anything,
But,
just make us shut up.
But at the end of the day, too, I mean, it's also that mom that was invited to the party.
Well,
You know, she was there. And I
Apparently,
think,
everybody was invited to that party.
Wait, which?
but that's like Bridget, but like the party at the end.
oh.
Yeah, and that's just very rom-com tropey. You know, I'm like, wow, this fabulous TV host is even at this like residential party. I don't believe it, but sure, that's
I mean,
great.
I agree.
Rom-com.
I don't believe that.
No, but they have history. Isn't the idea that they have history together, that they've known each other?
I mean, yeah, that's the idea. Realistically, that woman would be at some fetching party on like a rooftop, but it's cute that they put her at Bridget's humble little house.
We also have to understand too. Isn't Bridget rich?
Yeah, true. She is technically the Baroness or something, whatever his position
Yeah,
was. He was
didn't he have a title?
she's technically like a dowager.
Technically, yeah.
I mean, that school didn't look cheap.
Yeah.
Oh no! Now they're her neighborhood,
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
And
woman
she
who
aff-
had the
and she could afford the help.
backyard party. And
she's
then
not. She
Bridget,
might not be
where
like
she held a
TV show
party.
rich, but she's definitely comfortable
Yeah.
rich.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, point being though is that there's this. Again, I'm not a rom-com fan, right? So some of those rom-com tropes, I'm just like, oh, what an unrealistic portrayal of certain things, or things that harp on tropes that I don't respond to, right? So for me, the things that work were the grief. Now, having said that, though, I do wish we had more time with her children. I think that a big chunk of the middle is spent way too much on the sex and relationship. And then it circles back to the fact that, oh, yeah, her kids don't have a dad. And it's like, oh, your son is withdrawn. And I'm like, oh, yeah, fuck. Her son, a character. And so although it got me and I had an emotional response, especially when he sings the song from Oliver, the musical.
Oh, is that what? I had no idea what that song was.
Yes. I think it's a commercial now for Huggies, but it's from a musical. I wish there was a little bit more time focused on it, which I find also very funny because I think Mad About the Boy was too long. I think that 2 hours is a lot for a rom-com. And I think it should have been closer to an hour and 45. But I'm one of those people that's like, horror movies should be an hour and a half. Rom-com shouldn't be 2 hours. And I guess everything else has free reign. Certain genres, I tend to like them better when they're tighter.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the runtime for this film was a little long. I don't know. I personally don't care about the kids that much because, like, the kids, again, I guess the film is about Bridget Jones, not her children. Granted, the children are part of her life, but like in this case, the children are an extension of her life.
Well, they're part of her struggle as a mother. Excuse me.
The way they were painting it at the beginning of at least the beginning of the film, is that she doesn't have her life kind of in order, right? She's kind of, I don't know. She stopped almost like taking care of herself because she started to become so hyper focused on the kid, and she was just being sloppy at it, right? That's what one of the main critiques are, like, her friends were giving her, like, she's putting her kids before herself, and that's kind of what this movie was supposed to be about, like, kind of her taking a little bit of time for herself, putting her career first, and whatnot, right? And I guess again, that's why I think maybe why the foil of that, like, self-involved mother worked in this case, right? Because Bridget's life had fallen apart when she was widowed. And here we have obviously the mother who has like kind of that perfect life. She has a rich husband who's not involved. Obviously, that's the shitty part of her life that we're meant to understand. But she focuses all her attention on the kids, where Bridget Jones kind of is trying to figure out. She's kind of figuring out the balance that is for herself and also still for the kids. And I think that's okay. I think that's kind of a stronger message to have, because I think sometimes mothers are often relegated to just put all their attention 100% on the kids and never on themselves. And here we are kind of getting this thing where like it's okay to put your needs first, sexual or whatever they may be, before, putting your energies into your child, right? It's a kind of that saying, put on the mask before you help your child.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just, maybe my read is off on that one. I don't, Eddie, do you have an opinion? Did I miss the mark?
No, but it's all like in encompassing with her actually going through the grieving process. I mean, it's 4 years later, so her
I thought it
going
was
to
5, but yeah.
her going to the grieving process, and trying to, be a single parent through that. Um, so I really feel like it was kind of a natural course of her coming to a point where she needed to recognize that the best thing that she can do is um, pick up herself and begin taking care of herself, because that in herself is going to lead her to be a better mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But what I do enjoy about the character is she's unapologetically who she is. She is all these things, silly. Sometimes her approach to things, people don't feel comfortable. Or sometimes she comes in like a wrecking ball,
Mm-hmm.
or she's messy. But this is all the things that we love about her. But I also think that these are all the things that she loves about herself too.
Right. And it's relatively these are all the things that Mark loved about her too. And even to some extent, what Hugh Grant's character still loves
Yeah,
about
he
her,
calls
right?
her the love of his life.
Yes, right. Which I thought was sweet, right? Like I think he looks at her as the one that got away, rightfully so.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed their like dynamic, how they could laugh about things years later. They just seemed like it seemed so realistically mature. People able to look back on the stupidity of their youth and like fondly remember it. I really liked that. I think Hugh Grant right now is really killing it as an actor. Really like living up to his name, but also giving us something different. Again, I always love Renee. And I know that this is not why these movies exist, but I was like, oh, wow, is she going to actually be okay with being alone? She didn't. And it didn't go that way. And I know that this is not what these movies' primary function is. She always has to kind of get paired with someone. But it kind of would have been nice if she was like, hey, this was fun. I got what I needed. I'm good now. And I have me. And I was kind of like, maybe they'll go there. But no, she ended up with this guy who I was like, okay, he seems fine. Didn't really feel very romantic to me. But
I think
sometimes you just want someone there, I guess.
But like for him, so I did think that she did come to a point where she kind of recognized that I don't need to be in a romantic relationship to be my true self. That's why I enjoyed the scene of the breakup between her and what's his name again? Rockstar. Because she could have, if she was in that headspace, she would have been like, "I'll take you back." Yeah, you make promises like that. Yeah, and he looked very sincere and very tender in coming back to her so apologetically. But she did. It was something so, even though she's a mature person, but there's something so self-actualized or enlightened for her to say no. And I was like very moved by that. And I was also moved by his pain too of being rejected from her. The teacher was more, I think her love or her falling in love with him was her witness of his kindness to her children, and really being a fatherly figure to her son at this time.
It's one of those things, right, where like these movies do perpetuate this idea of like we all need to be paired off and stuff, like, and that's not necessarily true, but on some level it kind of is. Like we do all seek some sort of companionship, I think, and whatever that may be, right? And in this case, it's a rom com, so it's gonna swerve towards the romantic part, and I don't think. I'm not trying to make it sound like she was settling for him because I don't think that was the case. I think there was just a comfort in knowing that there is a good man who can who can also help her with these kids, right? Because you can only depend on the nanny for so long. Who I thought the nanny was going to end.
The nanny.
I thought the nanny was going to run off with Rockstar. I thought that's why she was introduced so early. Like I'll be like, okay, well she's going to steal Rockstar away from her. But I'm glad the nanny wasn't. She wasn't portrayed as a villain. Yeah, she was.
Yeah, no, she was just there.
A nice girl.
She was just a nice girl who was there and who had nothing better to do on New Year's Eve but to tend to that party. I was like, okay.
I feel like nannies.
Apparently, you guys are very understanding of the bad writing of this script, which is a little forgiving.
I fill it in. I do a lot of like fill in the blanks here because I didn't feel like she was there per se to be a nanny or babysit. I felt like at this point she was kind of like already part of the family. You know,
and I think nannies so. We didn't get that many scenes with her, though.
I know, no. Like, I also am not crazy of the fact that we didn't get enough. I think we needed 2 more scenes with the science teacher for it to feel a little bit more organic.
But it would make it be longer,
a little bit organic, because I feel like it's
it
like
was long.
The last act was rushed in the sense of
yeah.
You know, I think we needed more acts of kindness or more witnessings of how the beautifulness of each other. Too, because that's how it is. It's like she witnesses his beauty and what kind of man he is in his environment, and he sees her and her wackiness and her tenderness and her love for her kids. You know, but we didn't get. I feel like we didn't get enough of that.
Yeah, I do know that they filmed much more material that wasn't used in the final cut because it showed up in the trailers.
Yeah, so there you go.
And so there were scenes
that didn't
show up in the thing.
They should have cut out some of those, slow motion scenes of Rockstar, and then
disagree.
I love Rockstar.
I like Rockstar. Actually, the first sex scene between her and Rockstar, I think was shot so tender. I thought this is why I was surprised it was shot by a man. It was so tender, and it was still both erotic without being like porny. Right, like, and still being funny. Like, I think they did a good balancing act in that, like their initial hookup scene. So yeah, I maybe I'm more forgiving this movie because I actually ended up liking this more than the original Bridget Jones. And I think ultimately it just comes down to because I just related to this character more. There's something like I'm not a widow, knock on wood, right? But I think I can relate to this Bridget Jones more so than I could ever relate to the single version, because I feel like the single version is just something that doesn't exist, where obviously we're in 2025. Like, I am closer in age. Well, how old was she in the original movie? I'm
sorry, what do you mean by the single version is something that doesn't exist?
No. The like in 2025, like the way we stigmatize single people, and she was in her 30s or late 20s.
No, she started in her 30s.
I think she was in her early 30s.
I'm closer to her age in the original film than I am to her 50s. Thank God. But I think what I'm trying to say, though, is that like the character that they portrayed in the original film, I don't feel is realistic to maybe the time period we're in, right? Of course, I'm looking at it through contemporary eyes. But the character that they have introduced now is something that, okay, this I can relate to. I have more empathy. I have more, I don't know, more of a connection.
No, I know what you mean. I definitely enjoyed this film much more. And this film makes me want to, because I liked the first one. It was like cute and everything, but this one just had more substance to it. It really had an emotional level that I could engage with. There was something so cool about her friends rooting for her, like her inner circle, her three buddies, and how they root for her, and even though they knew that Rockstar was probably not gonna last, they was happy that she was still taking the leap. That's why that pool scene was so, besides it being so hot, it was so I was like one of those things like, yes, Like, I really wanted this for like Bridget. I really wanted her like to have a win, and for everybody to witness it. For everybody to see. Like she she can still bring it.
Yeah, what a way to introduce your hot boy toy to your friends, right? Like having him rescue a dog, then take off his shirt, revealing his like ripped abs.
A dog which was a very good swimmer too.
Yeah, everyone just freaking out.
Well, for me, someone who doesn't necessarily like rom-coms and all the tropes that come with it, a lot of the jokes on the farcical side just didn't land for me. But I think this movie at its best is when it's about the grief. I think this movie is doing too much, and that a lot of it feels imbalanced, and it is a bit too long. But as I've watched every 4 of these, I appreciate this movie the most since the first one, because it's doing something different, and it's doing something what I consider to be important for women of this age to have in a movie. And it's very similar, like I said, to End Just Like That, where, it begins with, spoiler alert, Mr. Big dying and her trying to navigate that. And everything about her life that you're used to has completely changed. But there's some familiar hijinks. It's very much like that. And this one worked a little bit more for me in that front. Maybe it's because she has children. And maybe because, they didn't have the character of Trey in this. Who knows? But I was surprised. And overall, out of all the sequels, I do think that this is the best effort that they had. So,
yeah. One thing I forgot to mention was I liked how they used Colin Firth very minimally in this film. Like the ghost. I thought it was going to be a ghost movie. I was just like, oh, we're going into a different genre. I love it.
Yeah, you think it was going to be more Jane Eyre, but it wasn't. So,
yeah.
But it was good. It was a pleasant surprise on that front, albeit though I remember I looked and I was like, oh my God, there's another hour to this movie. But still. I liked it very much. Now, comparatively to the other sequels or to the first one, how do we feel? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode, the third part of this. So to be sure to tune into that. And if you like this video, share your thoughts. If you're a Bridget Jones fan, if you're a rom-com fan, what you agree with, what you don't, just like, comment, all that jazz. And until next time,
stay an original.